Hey, in this video we're going to talk about why we almost certainly did not choose to take part in this game called life. So in a lot of spiritual teaching, especially a lot of like new age spiritual teachings, you hear a lot that we kind of like chose to be here on earth and that we chose to take part in this game. Some people say that life is kind of like a school, and although on some level I believe that could be true, we're going to talk about why I don't believe that we really had any choice in basically taking part in life, or what I call like the Matrix. Some people might have different definitions of what the Matrix is, but my definition of Matrix is basically life itself. Consciousness, awareness, all of that is the Matrix. And so when people talk about ascending out of the Matrix and like kind of breaking out of the Matrix, I have really only come to see one way that you can do that, and it's not what everybody imagines it being. So we're in this thing that a lot of people like to call the Matrix, just kind of this like program, this construct created by something, and we're basically like stuck in it. So the first thing that I want to point out is that life itself is the Matrix. The way that I view life is basically we are kind of like thoughts of God. We're kind of God's imagination. And by God, I basically mean like awareness or consciousness. And so like, did we have a choice to be alive and to come here? I think that it's definitely possible that within the sort of like matrix or thought bubble that we're co-creating here, we definitely could have chosen from some higher perspective or some like other energetic level to explore what it's like to be a human on Earth. But then even when you think about, say, like higher selves or angelic beings or anything higher up, that you might think is like some conscious light being that looks down and says, okay, I want to explore this next. Well, then you have to ask the question, well, how did they get there? Did they get to choose to be an angelic being, or an oversoul, or, you know, all these different, mostly new age terms? Did they get to choose to be this like highly advanced being? And, you know, likely they evolved up to it over a long period of time. Like, say, they were maybe humans billions of years ago, and then they just evolved and became more conscious and came into being these more light, mentally clear, psychic beings that aren't as physical. But it's very likely that they didn't have a choice to be that. And so I guess what I'm getting at is like, at the very core, did God have a choice? Did consciousness have a choice to play the game of consciousness? And the conclusion that I always come to is no, it's not really possible, because without consciousness, you can't choose. So consciousness is basically just like thrust upon you, and then you're kind of figuring out what the hell's going on once you become conscious, but you don't have the choice to become conscious beforehand. It wasn't like God or the universe saying, you know what, I'm going to become conscious. That's not possible, because obviously you'd have to already be conscious to make that choice. So basically at the core, God did not ask to exist or ask to create things. It was kind of like this power that was just somehow imbued into reality. And, you know, I interchange God with reality, the universe, consciousness, awareness. So when I say God, that's basically what I'm meaning. So you could think of life as a game, but it's not a game that was chosen to be played. Kind of on like sub-levels is when like choice starts to come in, maybe, for like choosing how we want to play the game. But the core aspect here is that the game exists, and it seems like potentially no one can stop the game. It's an infinite game. And so my guess is that even if the universe wanted to stop the game, it probably couldn't or wouldn't know how to stop the game being life or reality or existence or consciousness. So for me, I think of life as basically just a constant process of God exploring itself. Life is exploring itself to figure out what the hell's going on. All of a sudden it's conscious, it starts becoming aware, and then becomes more aware and starts creating more and more, and creating more dimensions, creating more beings, creating more aspects of itself that can explore itself in just like infinite amounts of ways, so it can discover itself, it can know itself, it can experience itself, because that's kind of I think that's kind of like the the great spiritual statement of all time, is like, know thyself. You know, as humans and as other beings, we don't even scratch the surface of our potential and what we are. Like, we have no clue what we are or what we're doing here. And I think it's likely that neither does God. Just like we were children, we grew up in this like crazy world, and we're discovering it for ourselves. We're exploring what we can do here, what are the rules, what's possible, and I imagine that God is basically doing the same thing. And it may have been slow at first, but at some point you're gonna want to know every little detail about yourself. There's no way you could just be an infinite being, you know, just alive for eternity and not explore every aspect of yourself. So that's why we have good and bad, polarity. That's why we have the most like horrendous evils, because that is an aspect of like God that God can conjure up. It's like, oh wow, like, where are the edges of terror and horror and violence? If you're a conscious being, at some stage you're gonna want to know where all of your edges are, if there are edges. How far out can you take it? You know, these are all just like questions of what am I, and what can I do? How, you know, what am I capable of? And if you've got an infinite existence, you're gonna want to play these things out at some point. Okay, so we're like, if we're sort of like the small images of gods, we're God's children, and we have a lot of the same like power to create with our imagination, with our choice. We can kind of do whatever we want within the limitations of being a human, and there may be consequences, but we're kind of exploring like what's the best way to live, what's the best way to be a conscious being. And I imagine all this information is kind of like, the way I think about it, I don't know if this is true, these are just speculations, all this is just speculation, obviously, but yeah, kind of like everything in life is a feedback system that's kind of looping in on itself, just like feedback. Okay, you might think of it like the brain going to nerves and organs, and then the organs taking that signal, receiving it, processing it, and being like, okay, this is what I need to do next. Then they make a move, and then they send signals back up to the brain, and then the brain says, okay, now I've got new information, and it's just this constant communication cycling in on itself. And so that's kind of how you can picture life, is it's just this constant communication between parts that create the whole, and so it keeps the whole moving in a direction that it basically wants to go. And it can kind of correct itself by us making mistakes. It can be like, okay, that was a mistake, let's correct. So it's kind of just this constant, this constant feedback loop. Okay, so let's talk about my ideas of what escaping the Matrix could actually look like. So in my mind, if the Matrix is basically awareness and thoughts, then the only way out of it is to be completely unconscious. And I have a lot of thoughts about this that I probably won't go too deep into this video, because I don't want this to be too long. But fully escaping the Matrix would be sort of, I don't know if you'd call it a regression. It might be moving forward. It could be the final stage of enlightenment. I don't really know. but it would be complete unconsciousness. It would be basically going back to like a complete void state where there's no awareness of anything. You're not aware of yourself. You're not aware of anything else that exists. It's just a timeless void space, and you have no consciousness at all. That would be escaping the Matrix, because to me the Matrix is consciousness, and I'm not certain that it's even possible to get there. I think you can experience glimpses of it, so I think it could be possible, but I don't know if it's possible to stay there for like eternity. And a lot of people, when they think of that being the only way out of the Matrix, they would gladly say, no, I'll just stay in the Matrix. I can deal with all the shitty stuff, all the oppression and all that. I can deal with the pain. Just don't give me nothing at all. Because that's very scary for most people. So we're basically all trapped here by our own mind and by time and space. And the way I've kind of thought about this is that time and space really is just created out of awareness. There's no time and space without thoughts or awareness. And basically time was birthed from awareness. Time is really just like a mental construct, and so is space, I believe. But the thing is, once you're aware, it's difficult to know how to not be aware anymore. Even killing yourself potentially will not cause you to, cause the cessation of awareness. You're likely still gonna have some form of consciousness after you die. So then it's like, okay, is it possible to escape awareness? And that's kind of like the big trap. That's like the big dilemma, the big sort of like practical joke of life, is that if this is true, then we're basically all stuck in awareness. There's basically no way out, potentially. Maybe you can get to a point like how I imagine maybe the Buddha transcended and like left the karmic cycle, because I imagine the karmic cycle being pretty much the same thing as like awareness. Like if you leave the cycle of karma, then likely you're very just completely unaware. And so maybe that's possible at an extremely high stage, but I still don't know whether you will be unaware forever. You won't really have that choice, whether you become aware again or not. And maybe that's a little complicated. I don't think I want to go into that. But just like how I was saying, you can't really, once you're unconscious, you can't choose to be conscious. It's just thrust upon you. And then you have to figure it all out. So like the smallest, basically, measurement of time is awareness. Because when you have thoughts and when you notice things, then you start to realize that there's like distance between ideas. There's distance between sensation. You had a sensation a moment ago, now you have a different sensation. There was a period between that. You had a thought, it took a period of time to have that thought. So if you're aware of anything, then that's when time is created. So here's another paradox of life, is that God did create the Matrix, but at that same moment, simultaneously, the Matrix created God. They're one and the same thing. God became aware in that moment, the Matrix was created, and now that the Matrix is created, then the Matrix basically creates God. They're basically like this intertwined thing. They're two sides of the same coin. They need each other to survive, basically. You could say that they're the same being. And so we kind of touched on like higher extra dimensional beings and things like that, extraterrestrials, highly evolved beings and stuff. And I may have already touched on this, but yeah, I want to make it pretty clear that like no matter how high up you are in our game here, you could be so close to like pure consciousness, and be the most loving being, the most neutral, unconditionally loving and accepting being ever. You could be pure light, but if you're still playing a part in our reality, then you're within the Matrix and you are still playing the game. You haven't escaped. And also notice that these pure beings of light and goodness, they are like the extreme end of polarity, which in turn creates the extreme end of the other end of the spectrum. So a lot of people think that, becoming these super light, advanced beings that are all good is a great thing, but what they don't realize is that those are really like an anchor for pure evil to exist as well. We live in a dual universe. The universe is trying to explore every aspect of itself. And yeah, these are just like two anchors for each other. So if all purity left existence, then so would all evil. They need each other to survive. So it's not necessarily a good thing to be good, because you're in turn creating evil, but you also can't really help it. We're in this game and we probably can't escape, and my preference is to be, a good conscious being that's helpful and kind and all that, and I think that that's a great thing to strive for. But I'm not like fooling myself into thinking that it's like some universally primal, like there's some prime morals that the universe has always had. It's more of just like a process of self-discovery and finding out what works and what is preferred within the game. So did we choose to incarnate here on Earth? Maybe. Maybe as consciousness developed and the game started adding on to itself and exploring, and now there's more options, there's more beings, there's more dimensions we get to choose potentially. Maybe we have no choice whatsoever in the whole universe and all this is just random, and I don't know. But if this is sort of like a game that's constructing itself and we're sort of like players within the game and we have some choice, then yeah, at some point we probably were like, okay, this place looks cool, I want to experience being a human on Earth, and then we had that choice, but we didn't have the choice of like becoming an aware being in the first place, being stuck within this infinite game. So on some level, yes, we probably had some choice in being here, but at like sort of the ultimate level, we did not have a choice in being here. All right, I think that's going to conclude this video. Thank you so much for watching. I'd love to hear your opinions and your philosophies and what you think of the video. I want to do more videos like this. And yeah, I just got this van, I'm living out of it, so that's pretty cool. I want to do more like kind of homeless vlogs in the van, as well as lifestyle and diet videos and education and all that. I know I say that in a lot of my videos. One of these days I'm going to get serious about YouTube again. But anyways, thanks for watching. Talk with you in the next one.